Welcome to Conversations on Resilient Leadership, where bold ideas, decisive action, and adaptive thinking shape the future. Presented by Enhance International Group.
Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with a remarkable leader, Jose Pires, Global Excellence and Innovation Leader of Global Excellence and Innovation from the great state of Texas. Jose Pires serves as the Excellence in Innovation E&I Executive Leader and Advisor for companies ranging from startups to Fortune 50, overseeing the global identification, prioritization, and execution of high-value improvements and innovations for companies, business partners, and customers in multiple markets. Jose has held E&I leadership positions in leading global companies such as the electronics industry with Sony, semiconductor with Cymer ASML, food retail with Nestle, energy, water, telecommunications infrastructure, Black & Veatch, and oil and gas, energy, and retail, Endeavor and Marathon Petroleum. Throughout his career, Jose developed and refined E&I as an award-winning program to accelerate innovation, collaboration, leadership development, strategy execution, and value creation globally. Jose is an advisory board leader and global TEDx keynote speaker for organizations and conferences on innovation, business, operational, and process excellence, collaborative leadership development, strategy execution, culture, business and digital transformation, exponential technologies, and growth acceleration. Jose is an executive Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt who holds a bachelor's in engineering physics from the University of Kansas and a master in business administration focused on investment banking and entrepreneurship from the University of San Diego. Please join me in welcoming Jose Pires. Jose, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you here. Long time talking about having you as part of this podcast series. People have done just fractions of what you've done over your life and changed so many lives. So it's an honor to have you here. Thank you. A few words?
Jim, it's great to be here with you and with an audience who I know that continues to accelerate excellence in innovation worldwide. Many colleagues are here with us. So excited to be here and share some stories, insights from our own journey.
Thanks, Jose. And with that, we'll just get right into it. And the first question is, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question to start with. We're going to discuss quite a bit about leadership. And I think that I'll start by saying that there is a lot of few myths around leadership and people, defining very complex ways. And it's intricate. But in order to simplify, and one of the themes that we're going to be using today is innovation through simplification. I want to get to the essence of things, which is hard to do. And I want to say that leadership is ultimately about our ability to create positive change. If I want to pass on the first important message when it comes to the topics of leadership and leadership development, is that the ultimate definition of leadership, and a simple definition, is that it's the ability to create positive change. So judge yourself on that measurement stick, if you will, your ability to create positive change, and judge others that way as well. Later on, we're going to discuss more advanced leadership concepts such as transactional leadership and collaborative leadership. But starting with the definition of leadership as the ability to create positive change is a good first step.
I love that. Create, positive change in an organization, and that organization could be anything, right? That could be your community, your personal life. It's the folks that they stand up in the room and they exclude all that leadership qualities, as you mentioned. And that is something that is learned over time, I'm sure, isn't it?
That's right. And Jim, I'm glad you mentioned that. A very important disclaimer that I must say up front is that, several of these concepts and really kind of like the essence of these concepts, it's not something that I came up with. It's not something that, one day I woke up and I had this great realization about things. These are the lessons that I have learned directly from more than 50,000 cross-industry leaders of collaboration, excellence, and innovation for value creation. This spans nowadays more than 50 countries across all industries. And we're talking about nonprofits
Amazing.
like the Vatican, all the way to the half of the Fortune 50 organizations which we currently advise on these topics. So make no mistake, I have learned directly from some of the greatest minds and some of the what I call the great enduring leaders and organizations in the past 3 decades or so. So some of these concepts are come directly from them.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it and honored that you're sharing those with us today. That's for sure. So thanks so much. So one question that always comes up was as you're starting your journey early in your career is management leadership. And I think it gets very confusing, when you're starting out. So can you share the difference between from what you've heard from others and your thoughts on the difference between management and leadership and how that changes as the journey, as people go through their journey?
Yeah, important distinction, and it's the beginning of forces that pull in very different directions sometimes, and it's a concept that I want to talk about later on: the mastery of contradictions. When you have these forces like management pulling in one direction, leadership pulling in a different direction, but maybe they are supposed to be complementary. What is the answer then? And I'll tell you, cheat sheet here. The answer to this complicated questions is usually both. When you're like struggling between things that pull in different directions, what we have learned from great enduring leaders and organizations is that they don't spend endless hours debating A or B. They have learned that the best solutions lie in the intelligent blending of A and B. So there is one key point there. The world of greatness is not an or world. The world of greatness is an and world. And that and world may feel like contradictory at times, and I'm often guilty of sounding contradictory on the things that I say. So management leadership is a great example of that. So when I think of management, it's all about maintaining systems, process, and performance. It focuses on control, planning, and execution to achieve predictable results. Managers optimize, organize, and coordinate resources efficiently. Do we need that? Yes, we do. We do need that. Okay, what about leadership? Well, leadership is about inspiring people toward a vision, focuses on influence, innovation, and change to achieve extraordinary outcomes. Leaders motivate, they challenge, they empower others to move beyond the status quo. Do we need that? Yes.
Yeah.
So the answer is both. I don't think you can be a great leader without being a great manager. And perhaps some will say that leadership is an evolution of management, which I could agree with. So if you want to simplify again, if I look at the best minds and how they simplify it, both are essential, but management is about doing things right, and leadership is about doing the right things. So I feel that we're in a bit of a crisis of management and leadership across all industries, and therefore I spent a lot of time on leadership development. But interesting enough, during that leadership development journey, we're actually teaching a lot of things that are like basic managerial skills to people. So this is an interesting time, and I think that there needs to be a refocus on some of those basic skills, on managerial skills and leadership skills. I'll quote one of the great leaders that I've had and mentors that I have the privilege to learn from, and that's Jim Collins. And when he did his research on great enduring leaders and organizations, I love a quote that summarizes that says that the signature of mediocrity is not an unwillingness to change. The signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. Chronic
Mm,
inconsistency with what? With your purpose, with your
mm,
objectives. And organizations and leaders today are chronically inconsistent with their purpose because there's all this change again, this zigzag across a flat line. They're not scaling with consistent with their purpose. And consistency with purpose, by the way, is the way that I define discipline. Discipline is being
mhm.
consistent with that purpose. We're very undisciplined about our approaches today
So how
when it
much
comes
is it the
to
inconsistent?
leadership.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just, how much is it they don't know what their purpose is?
A lot. There's very little alignment. The average CEO tenure in the United States is about 3 years.
Yeah, it's 3 years now. So they're
So,
just
how, and then, in those 3 years, that CEO is typically trying to align with people internally or bringing people from outside his or her team,
yeah, trying to
um,
sell
as opposed to
themselves.
align with the purpose of the organization. And there's very little alignment at the very senior levels of organizations. I
So what
spend a lot of
happens?
time in that, and I think I'll spend the rest of my useful function, if you will, because my career finished a while ago. Today, this is a journey of life for me. I look at leadership development as a life mission, and I'm sure I'm going to die, and there will be plenty of problems to be solved in this area because it's the impact is tremendous, by the way, on doing some very basic things and including alignment of senior leaders. That's surely where it all starts. A clear purpose, a strong set of core values that are aligned with that purpose. At one point in my career, I joined an engineering design company and doing infrastructure development globally. They had more than 12,000 interdisciplinary engineers, okay, doing this incredible infrastructure projects
Mhm.
in energy, water, and telecommunications. But I
Sure.
was mostly focused on the energy part of the business,
Mhm.
which was by far the largest part of the business. So incredibly smart people. Company has been around for more than 100 years. So
Yeah.
the CEO picks me up and says, "Hey, Jose, I need you to come in here into our organization and I need you to accelerate innovation for us." So he makes a capital mistake because he goes to the organization and say, "Hey, Jose Pires is here to help us accelerate innovation in our organization." Well, that was a death wish for me because, think about now.
Yeah.
This people have been there for 100 plus. I'm not the individuals, but the organization has been there for 100 plus years. I mean, for sure they have innovated for 100 plus years. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Still
Mhm.
successful. Some of those people, they could care less about what the CEO had to say. And in fact, one of them looked at me and said, "Hey, Jose, I understand that you're here to accelerate innovation in nuclear power plant design. You have a background in engineering and physics, but son, you have never really designed a nuclear power plant in your life. But that's okay because you're going to accelerate innovation for us. Listen, I'm going to duck here long enough for this new strategy to blow by and die a slow death. And when it does, they're gonna fire you and everybody who looks like you, innovation boy, and starts laughing, ha ha ha. Typical engineering joke. Because
Sure,
all the
sure.
other senior engineers start laughing as well. It thinks
Mhm.
it's okay. And I'm just there and quiet and I shut up and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a tough culture. So what you do, you shut up, you
Yeah.
join them, meet them where they're at, and
Yeah.
create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means to
Yeah.
build trust and credibility with them. But the
Right.
point being is that I love that quote. I'm gonna duck here long enough to see this new strategy blow by and die
Yeah.
a slow death. And
I've
Jim,
seen it.
this is
Yeah.
happening
All the time.
chronically across all organizations today. People are so overwhelmed by the new leader coming in with these multiple strategies that becomes a haze. They're the fog of war. They don't know what's really going on. I have done some studies on this, by the way, and we have
Mm.
estimated that even the best organizations, by the time that senior leaders know about something that's actually going on operationally, it has been going on for more than 18 months on average. So by the time that they heard about it, we had already solved the problem. And that's the 18-month gap with senior leadership awareness is quite common.
Yeah. And so what are some of the best practices you've learned that leaders do to cut through that, to shorten
Well,
that?
it's to engage those leaders on what is actually going on, because again, a great leader also has to be a great manager, and you need to know operationally what's happening in your business. And a lot of leaders don't have that awareness, or they're being told stories, right? And then there's the
Yeah.
filtering
The
that
convenient
goes on.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So I think that, we'll get to it later on in the development of
yeah.
collaborative leadership, engagement, real engagement of senior
Mhm.
leaders with everybody in the organization. It's a way of really flattening the organization tremendously so that senior leaders have direct access to what's going on with this improvement and innovation teams that are bringing up opportunities and challenges in real that are happening today in the
Mhm.
organization. And then at the same time, that's helping shape the strategies in a way that's real, that's not abstract.
Excellent. Look forward to that. So going back to our agenda, so to speak, we've diverted a little bit, but going back to that, are there any leaders out there that you look to that really influenced you in your leadership? Because obviously you become a great leader over time. Who are some of your key influences?
I'll say that, the all these concepts and principles that I have shared and I'll continue to share with you, they're really not mine. They come from this leader. So the first answer is that there are too many to even count. I mean, hundreds for sure, probably thousands of leaders who had an impact. By the way, how do we decide what we use and what we don't use? What we do is that we listen to principles, we listen to strategies, we listen to approaches that organizations have done, and then what we do is very simple. We test and attempt to implement those principles, because every principle sounds amazing until it faces the test of execution. And that goes all the way back to, Peter Drucker in the very beginning of my career, and then Jason Jennings, Jim Collins, Peter Diamandis, and so many other great leaders that have had an impact. For those of you who are listening or watching this, my experience at Sony in the beginning of my career was a breakthrough for me. I was so lucky to have Hayashi-san as my first boss. I joined Sony, with a background in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and physics. I thought I was at top of the world, and then I'm expecting a 2-year rotational program for good engineers, to learn about Sony. And he comes to me and says, Jose-san, you must identify 100 innovations across technology development and advanced manufacturing. And I look at him and say, Hayashi-san, I'm the new guy. I was hoping I was going to get some training. And he looks at me and says, Jose-san, no training. You must do. And, I tell the story that I felt like I had walked into this Star Wars episode and Yoda is telling me to follow the Force. Because, Jim, I didn't even know what innovation was. And the man wanted me to identify 100 innovations. And again, just to short circuit for this audience here. So after struggling through those 100 innovations on the first week, I thought about quitting. I thought I was inept. And I came back on Monday, and then he says, oh, Jose-san, this week I have a new assignment for you. And I was all excited to hear that. And then he looks at me and says, this week you identified 200 innovations. And I tell people that I lower my head, and I thought about punching him. And by the time I raised my head back up, he was gone. And I went on and identified 200 innovations. But that lesson, I mean, nowadays, by the way, I don't know if you'd get away with that, right? There would be all sorts of ramifications of his behavior, of his leadership behavior. But the reality is that shaped my professional and personal journey deeply. He is one of the greatest leaders of collaborative leaders I've ever worked with. To this day, he leads display and technology for Sony worldwide. He's not only a great mentor, but he became a father figure for me. And most important, he taught me so many critical lessons. And I'll just share 2 quick ones with the audience right now. The first audience, and actually it's a question for you, Jim. And I want the audience to think about this. Why did that man do that to me? I mean, I'm the new young engineer coming to this amazing, think back 3+ decades. Sony was at the pinnacle of technology development.
Yeah.
And I was like in the Google X of division of Sony. And it's like, he had hundreds of experts at his disposal. So, Jim, why do you think he picked me? Why did you say, okay, let's get this guy here, this Jose Pires guy, to go do innovation for Sony? Why do you think he would pick me?
I think he picked you to see if you were inspired to succeed, to find out what you had inside yourself. That's what comes to my mind as you're giving this story.
That's right.
Is-
That's
and
one
find
very
the
good reason.
inspiration of and that will inspire everybody. So he's trying to create an inspirational culture, I think. It's what comes to me.
Very good. But let me ask you this. If that is true, by the way, well done. Now I'm gonna ask you further on that. But why not if you want to accelerate innovation, why don't you just tap the hundreds of experts that you have at your disposal, as opposed to this new guy coming in who doesn't really understand what you're doing?
Because that you doing it will inspire the others, because then they will, because I'm sure they got asked the same question. You're just one of the, everybody's gone through the gauntlet. You're not special.
That's
So
right. That's right. But he's and here's the other thing, right? With when you bring someone new into the organization like that, and you truly ask, because by the way, he truly reviewed my ideas. I mean, that 100 idea report in the first week, he went through every single item asking me how I was going to implement that idea. I wasn't even ready for that. I mean, he was asking me details of implementation for my
yeah,
ideas. I mean, he deeply cared about my ideas. That's very important. It was not just
yeah,
some
yeah. He didn't
theoretical
brush you off.
exercise.
That's the key. He
But the other
respected
thing,
you
yes,
for
and the
your
other thing,
thoughts.
Jim, is that you know, he did that in a very important moment because as I come into that organization, I was a novice, in the mind of an expert, there is only one way. In the mind of the novice, there are many ways.
Million.
Many ways. So, if the essence of innovation is the ability to take a different perspective on a problem or opportunity, you know, tapping the mind of the novice is a phenomenal thing, right? So, which then follows up in another very important lesson from Hayashi-san. So, what do you think is the best mindset for a true innovator? Is that the mindset of the novice or the mindset of the expert?
Of course, the novice, because all is possible. As an expert, only limited things are possible.
Yeah, but you just fell for the trap. You
Oh,
just fell for the trap. I
okay.
did it on purpose.
Okay.
Remember, Jim, the world of greatness is not an or world. The world of greatness is an and world. And
Yeah.
the best innovators, they have both.
Both.
They
Yeah.
have both the mindset of the novice
Yeah.
and the
And the
mindset of the expert.
expert. Yeah.
And I want to emphasize this because it ties back to the principles that we
Yeah.
discussed before. This mastery of contradictions is one of the things that I learned very early in my career, was very important, because I also thought, and most people think, it's the mindset of the novice. But
Hmm.
it's not. The best innovators, they have both mindsets. They have the mindset of the novice, the ability to take a different perspective of problem or opportunity, but they also have the mindset of the expert in the sense that they are able to scale that opportunity consistent with their purpose.
Yeah.
Because think about it, this is what experts do. They have done already. They know how to
Yeah.
scale things.
Yeah.
So you need to develop both mindsets.
Yeah.
So we spend quite a bit of time doing that, developing mindsets of the novice, mindsets of the expert. And then when we cannot do that with an individual, especially when the experts are so stuck in their ways that they will not
Yeah.
consider different approaches. So what we do is that, well, of course, we create teams, right? Where these
Yeah.
mindsets can be combined. So that's a very important lesson. I want the audience to remember this. We both is the answer for most of these complex questions. And
Yeah.
because the end world, the mastery of contradictions, and specifically the what we have found empirically through the test of innovation execution, which is the way that these real innovators are revealed, is that they have this combined mindsets of novice and experts. And innovation is a misused and abused word these days. People don't even understand what it means, but everybody's doing innovation, they think. And then I talk about, is it about ideas? Is it about methods, about technologies, about people? How do you accelerate innovation? And we can talk about those components, ideas, methods, technologies, and people. But I'll short circuit the answer for you here. And it's about finding the right people in an organization. And the right people are those who are able to scale innovation consistent with the purpose of the organization. And this is a very important concept. It's people who are able to scale innovation consistent with the purpose of the organization. And if you're doing a transformation, consistent with the transformational objectives.
Mhm.
So, how do you find these people? And that's the key question. And the way to find these people is through the test of innovation execution. You see, I say this often. Innovation doesn't care about my gender, race, ethnicity, or how many certificates I have hanging on the I love myself wall. You can get educated to death. and not be a great innovator. So great innovators are only revealed by the test of innovation execution. And it's through the test of innovation execution that the real innovators and the real traits of innovators are revealed. And the real traits of innovators that we have found now over the past 30 years of doing this consistently across all organizations are four traits. And they are purpose alignment, meaning that as an individual, I got some time to align the purpose that I have as an individual with the purpose of what my organization does. So, not to sound too abstract, what does that mean? What that means is that if I ask you, Jim, I have 5 goals for this year for you, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, Jim, I have 4 goals and the fifth goal is yours, okay? Tell me what you want to do. If you have freedom to do whatever you want to do, what would you work on? So that's purpose alignment, okay? I'm not telling you what to do or how to do anything for sure. You are actually coming up with that. So that's purpose alignment. That's number one. And the other three are more about the execution side of innovation. And the other three are passion, discipline, and resilience. And we can go deeper onto this, but purpose alignment I already discussed. Passion is not serendipitous love. It's more like an arranged marriage. Discipline is not following a regimented set of rules. Discipline is consistency with purpose. And resilience is not being stubborn and never quitting. Resilience is about learning to overcome challenges collaboratively. And that's why collaborative leadership development is so critical, because you need to develop that skill set on people. So purpose, passion, discipline, resilience. This is what we're mining for. This is what the gold when it comes to innovation that I want people to learn about and look in their organizations and create a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms that allow the test of innovation execution to reveal to you those people who have purpose, passion, discipline, resilience. And once you find them, that's the greatest accelerator for innovation in any organization.
So can you train people on that, or they have to innately just have it?
There is a genetic setup for sure that there's more. There's, as genetic loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. So I don't want to sound too dramatic here, but you need both, right? You need genetics and you need environment and you need development. So genetics is that we're all born based on our own observations and certainly research that backs that up. We're all born with certain innate personality traits and we develop certain capabilities based on that as well. So there is a certain level, if you will, there is pre-programmed for us when it comes to purpose, passion, especially passion, discipline, and resilience. Not so much purpose, some purpose. But then, of course, you can develop that through your own life experiences. And a lot of people have life experiences that have, increased their levels of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. And certainly there are ways that we can expose people to challenges that they are able to overcome, which is very important. We want to make, appropriate challenges to the level that the individual is in that development cycle to increase their purpose, passion, discipline, resilience. So there are ways of training as well. So it's a combination, and we do spend time, on collaborative leadership development. Imagine that. We spend quite a bit of time on that development, but ultimately, make no mistake, we also have the test of innovation execution that's actually doing the final triage, if you will, because that's really how you get revealed. I mean, because I can equip you, but like Hayashi-san said, you must do.
So when you go into an organization, are you going in at the executive level and then training them from the top down, or are you going at midterm? How is that program set up?
I love that question. And my answer is that I joke with my client organizations that I'm cheap and easy with high morals. So I will go in with anybody who opens the door and wants to start something. And here's why. Because people say, oh, Jose, it needs to be top down. And, the CEO has to be willing to do this so that we can transform the organization. And I'll say, that sounds really good, Brian. So is Jack Welch or Greg Goff still working with you? Because your CEO doesn't have a clue. So you're going
Yeah.
to wait for your CEO to make some sort of mandate or edict that, this is what's going to happen.
Nirvana moment.
You know,
Get it.
if you
Yeah.
are incredibly lucky to be in that very, very, very tiny minority of
Yeah.
organizations that have a CEO with a vision of what innovation can actually do for you, what excellence can do for you, what collaboration can actually do for you. I mean, if you are blessed with that gift, you are a lottery winner.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so most of the everybody, all other CEOs in the world are humans who do not have these experiences. Okay, they got there for different means. So what do you do? By all means, you're gonna if I'm invited in by a CEO or a C-level leader in general, that I'm great because I know I have more leverage. I know I have, we can cast a bigger shadow of leadership in this organization. That's fantastic. But am I gonna be waiting for my CEO to have some sort of vision of the future? No. So here's what I tell people, come in at any level. You can apply these principles at your department. Oh, Jose, you talk about all these things, these great multi-billion dollar organizations, but I have a team of 5 people. And I said, okay, you know what? Go implement this with your team of 5 people because it can be implemented at all levels in the organization. No CEO in the world ever came back to me and said, Jose, hey, I can't believe that you implemented the system in my organization because these people are now, driving tremendous
You're
value
out of
creation for the
yeah.
company and the strategy execution has accelerated. What in the world are you doing? Nobody complains about that. So I tell people, and this is a very important lesson, do the right things, okay? And the right things will happen. So if you're focused on collaboration, value creation, strategy execution, and really delivering results, you're in a good place. So, I
Mhm.
mean, align and influence your CEO. So, the answer to that, Jim, is that so I operate in all levels. Several of my clients are very large clients that they start at the very top and down. There is quite a bit of people who have a vision, but there's no support in the organization, bottom up. And that takes a lot longer for sure. I mean, I'm talking about 5 to 10 years, but they
Mhm.
have gotten there. And sometimes that's more sustainable than the top down because that CEO left after 3 years, by the way.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And then I think the most common is middle out. Middle out is most common, where we actually see that there is someone, I call that individual a steward. It's the ultimate form of ownership, stewardship. Someone who says, you know what? I'm tired of the CEOs changing every 3 years and about all these different things going on. I'm going to do the right thing for the organization. I have enough span of control here to do something good. And then they focus on collaboration, excellence, and innovation for value creation. They are, after a period of time, they are recognized by others because while everybody else is reacting to chaos, they are consistent with their purpose over a long period of time, and they're delivering results. And then others start looking at it and start looking at their teams, and there is a good environment, there are great results, so they start copying. And honestly, most of the most successful organizations that I've worked with did not start from the top down. They started from the middle out. And then
Mhm.
now there are programs that have been ongoing for 10 years or more, and that's how I qualify great, delivering several of them billions of dollars in additional earnings for the organization. By all means, when I say this, these are my largest clients, right? I'm talking about, $400 billion revenue organizations. So, but many proportionally are delivering exponential results and engagement over a period of at least 10 years. And that's less than 1% of the total organizations in the world are able to not only maintain excellence and innovation that creates value, but continuously grow it over a period of 10 years or more. And those are very special organizations. That's my 1% club. And if I look at those, they are mostly middle out.
Mhm. So I have a question that I do a little bit of mentorship and this person comes from a very well run company, top 50 company from many, probably top 10 companies. And that person is looking to go and do something different. You know, they're going to get their MBA, one of the MBAs from one of the many programs out there. And they have an open invitation to go back to that company that's very well run that respects innovation, respects things. And I sit there and I struggle on advising her to, if I said, if you go out to another organization, you're never going to find an organization run the way this organization is run. And you can go out and you can always go back. And but she's pretty young in their career. So what is your advice when but they gotta, well, what else is out there? And they have it all now. They have the innovation and execution, probably following some of your guidance, I would imagine. But they could go out to another company and where that doesn't exist, but very young in the career, not a manager yet. What is your thoughts, the advice for somebody like that?
That's a great question, an interesting scenario. So first of all, disclaimer, context matters tremendously. I don't know the
Yeah,
context of this
yeah,
individual, family situation,
yeah,
income situation, reserves, that in
yeah,
case something doesn't go well.
yeah.
So, they have to account for all of that. I work with cohort of startups, and there is this myth that is startups and especially startup leaders, they embrace risk and they're like, they're risk takers. And I was like, well, it can be, but if they're disproportional risk takers, that's stupid, that's dumb. I actually
Yeah.
seen that the best startups and the best entrepreneurs that I work with, they are masters of managing risk. They
Oh,
do it in a
absolutely.
way that is risky for everybody else because they don't understand what they're doing. So they are actually implementing mechanisms that makes this unwielding risk totally manageable for them. So
Hmm.
this is great and smart. So first of all, I'll tell this individual to manage risk first. So do a risk assessment, manage your risk, and then
Hmm.
decide what to do. If you have managed the risk to a certain extent, which could mean that, I have some reserves. If this doesn't work out, I'm not going to be starving. My
Yeah,
kids are not going to go,
yeah,
not going to be able to go to school anymore, something like that. So manage your risks first. And then go do something that's both scary and exciting.
yeah.
Because the best things in life and work are the combination, the end again, of scary and exciting. Which means
Yeah.
that there is an energy about it, there is a mystery about it, and you're excited about it, but it's also a little bit fearful of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
good place to be. Because if you're either working on just scary or just exciting, it's not good.
No.
It can be problematic. So find a mix of scary and exciting because that's the best opportunities in life.
And then
And
maybe go
now
back to your
on
principles.
that,
Hmm.
and this is a very important piece of advice that I share with collaborative leaders, especially those who are trying different things. Do not go pick like a company to work for. Do
Yeah.
not go pick like, an industry to work
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Go find the best leader that you can work for.
Yeah.
This is very important
Yeah.
because you see, you can go to Google and work with someone who is the least innovative person you have ever worked in your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm at Google. I'm supposed to have all those opportunities for innovation. But no, your
No.
boss is a crow, and we can discuss
Yeah.
crows later on. Your
Yeah.
boss is a crow, and you're not
Yeah.
you're not really developing. So more than targeting an industry, more than targeting a company, find the leader that's already
Yeah.
doing what you want to become.
Yeah.
And then assess whether that person, that leader, has an interesting in developing others. Very important as
Yeah.
well.
Which leads to the next question is, when did you decide you wanted to be a leadership advisor and what drove you to that?
That's a great question because the answer is that I never wanted to be a leadership advisor. It wasn't until I mature into my career and my own leadership development and journey that I learned that while those systems that I enjoy so much were important, they paled in comparison to the impact of collaborative leadership development. I paid attention to the evidence, and the evidence showed me that it's not just about the system, Jose. It's not about just teaching people the right methods and principles. They must have the courage to lead, the courage and discipline to lead. Oh, by the way, the courage and discipline to lead collaboratively, which is harder. That's when I then start focusing more and more on collaborative leadership development. And then later on in my career, I became a leadership advisor. And that's really what I do for organizations today. So there are two skill sets, Jim, that separate what we call the multi-trillion dollar organizations that we're going to continue to have in the next few years from the multi-billion and from the multi-million organizations. And the multi-trillion dollar organizations have, and really they all need to have all the skill sets, but the biggest differentiator for the multi-trillion dollar organizations when it comes to leadership development specifically are two skill sets: collaborative leadership skills widely developed in the organization, and innovation execution skills. Collaborative leadership skills and innovation execution skills. Please note the word execution, not innovation skills, innovation execution skills. These two skill sets separate multi-trillion dollar organizations that we're going to continue to have more and more of to the multi-billion and multi-million. But it certainly needs to be, if you develop collaborative leadership skills in your organization at any level, no matter where you are in this journey, you're going to accelerate the building of a culture of collaboration, of excellence, and innovation that creates value, and that ultimately becomes the biggest competitive advantage, and a very difficult competitive advantage for others to emulate, by the way.
So I'll just ask a follow-up question on that. And I actually have two, but I'll ask just one right now. And that is around trust, because it seems like that you're saying everything but trust. Is there a reason for that, or is that purposeful or not purposeful?
So trust is foundational. In fact, one of the key, remember, we're creating an environment where people of diverse perspectives can disagree with you without fear of retaliation.
Yeah.
The word fear is endemic in organizations and at all levels. So the antidote to fear is trust at the social level. And that's foundational for collaborative leadership skills. And in fact, the best measurement of trust is effective collaboration. Yep. So we use effective collaboration as a gauge for trust. If we don't have effective collaboration, we often see that trust is the primary driver for that. Okay. So trust is not only necessary, it's essential for this journey. It's fundamental in this journey, building trust in the organization at the individual level, at the social level, and even at the system level. So there are three levels that we do: trust, motivation, and ability. So you need to be building value with the principles from that culture that you want to build. You want to create value right away. So you do these things in parallel. So there are going to be some project teams here working where you're going to be forming teams. But these teams are formed more, it's a combination of guidance and organic. But there is no doubt that we put disproportional impact on what we call the collaborative leader. The collaborative leader is the individual who has the courage and discipline to lead. And the individual who may have his or her idea or someone else's idea, but they volunteer to become a collaborative leader to go implement that new idea that creates value. First of all, we teach these collaborative leaders how to build trust, what effective collaboration means, all these components to become an effective collaborative leader. So there is that. And then, but the ultimate test is the test of innovation execution, not only for that collaborative leader, but for the entire team. Which means what, Jose? Which means that they must create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. Make it happen. And make it happen in a way that's constructive, that's building the culture. So what are the core values and behaviors that we follow? The values of collaboration, of excellence, of innovation. They are permeated by integrity, respect, trust, so this is all part of a system. So they're acting, they are showcasing, they are living these behaviors, if you will, through the projects that they're identifying. They're going to create the most value, shortest time, and simplest means. They're living these behaviors. They were properly trained on collaborative leadership skills and innovation execution skills. And in parallel to that, we have as cultural elements, we are messaging the organization about what collaboration means, the building effective trust, building effective collaboration, and all those great things that we need to do on the messaging. But very important also, and it's connected to the projects now, the recognition of those collaborative leaders in our organization that are delivering exponential value to the organization. And this is very important because the role model for collaborative leadership, excellence, and innovation in your organization has to come from your organization. It's not someone you hire from Google, Tesla, or Meta to come do innovation for your company. No, it has to be, Bill and Kyle and Marcy who are actually who are work with us on day to day, and now you're allowing them to unleash their potential collaboratively by leading these teams that create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. And then we have campaigns on these teams and people and the value that they have created for the entire organization. And you do this consistently over a long period of time, because every project that you do, you're showcasing the behaviors, the core behaviors of integrity, trust, respect, collaboration, excellence, and innovation that you want to build in your culture. And you're showcasing that in the context that this may be abstract values to people, but look, they are creating real value to the organization, because there are only two things that they're working on. It's either or a combination of value creation and or strategy execution. Those are the only two things they're allowed to work on.
So it sounds like you're building like a snowball effect.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Right. So I'm going to change the direction slightly, in that, through all these times, you must have had a failure sometime in your life that you turned into success. Are there any key stories you want to share there?
A failure that I turned into success. There is so many failures. It's that I turned into success. I would say that there was a big impact in my life when I was young, and I lost my dad when he was very young. But I wouldn't consider that as a failure. It's more of a challenge. Probably the biggest challenge of my life to this day. So focusing more on the business side of things and focusing on failures with business. If I go back to that startup with Cymer ASML, that then, by the way, Cymer became one of the most successful startups in the history of the semiconductor manufacturing industry to this day. And ASML is a top organization in the world to this day. I started working with Nikon and Canon on behalf of Cymer on doing the recognition for these laser systems. And really, it was a really interesting role. I was called the black belt for Moore's Law. It was the coolest, one of the coolest kind of, it wasn't my official title, it was the kind of the name that I had in the organization. I love it. I created this 200 plus page report with this beautiful graphs printed on them about all the overtime, the performance of these indicators of every step of manufacture of these laser systems. Well, guess what? The customers that I was representing, Nikon and Canon, they absolutely love that. Our manufacturing teams, and specifically our manufacturing leader, hated it.
Sure.
Hated it. Well, then what happened? I get invited to go talk to our executive vice president of operations. He was just, up there in the C-level with the CEO of the company. And I'll just say his first name is Bob. And he looks at me and says, Jose, you are a bright star in our business. You are a young engineer who have driven us to levels of excellence that were not even imaginable in this company just a year and a half ago. I have no doubt that you're right. And he pauses. But then he says, but my question to you is, are you being effective? And he paused. Wow. I just dropped. I froze, my heart dropped, and I thought, defensively, the first thoughts that come to my mind was like, what does he mean by that? What does he want me to compromise the truth? And and say what's right or not doing the right thing? I mean, this was contrary to my values. My first reaction was a very negative reaction. I was kind of angry at that questioning, because I thought he was compromising my values by asking that question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't remember much about the rest of that conversation. I mean, such was the emotion. So again, it was another high Sun moment. And then he leaves, and then I leave. And I'm doing an MBA at night. I was going to San Diego, to University of San Diego and getting my MBA. And then as I'm driving, I feel like I have this heart palpitations. I'm kind of like, I'm
Yeah.
having kind of a bit of a
Stressed
panic
out.
attack when I'm
Yeah.
driving. And I was like, I'm a very cool guy. I don't get, you know, moved by a whole lot of things and a bit stoic almost. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I decided that moment that I need to evaluate what that emotion was and why I was feeling that way, almost panicky about it. And I started rationalizing and thinking through this thing about being effective versus being right. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of deep thinking on that. Okay. And I'll summarize because that was a big failure for me. That was a big failure for me. I was more concerned about being right than being effective. But it took me a while to process these emotions and understand that the being effective was more important. Because you can be right and you can be dead, but being effective is more important than being right. And being effective, by the way, is at the heart of collaborative leadership, which, but from a context perspective, remember, that was the company that was developing collaborative leadership during that time. So the time was also very important because one of the key principles of collaborative leadership is that it's not about you being right. It's not about you having enough hierarchical power that when you have resistance, that you just overpower people and things and you create a blood trail. Collaborative leadership is about engaging with the resistance, people and things, collaboratively to overcome the challenges together. Because
Mhm.
together we go for extraordinary, which became my most advanced tagline, if you will. Because, and again, that was such a big lesson for me. And it was such a big failure for me.
So does that sum up in your mind the secrets of being a great leader? Is that what you just covered, or would you
The
want to add
secret
something?
of being a great leader is
Yeah.
ultimately the ability to create massive positive change.
Yeah.
Massive positive change is massive value creation. And when I say value creation, my non-profit organizations, the Vatican and the healthcare Indian organization that I work with and all those other organizations that I work with, we're going to be like, oh, hold on. What about, we are not about financial value creation. That is true. When I say value creation, I'm talking about financial and or social value creation. A
Hmm.
great leader must create significant, massive financial and or social value creation. We must serve the purpose of our organization in a way that creates tremendous value to society. And in doing so, you usually get rewarded pretty well if you focus
Hmm.
on doing that. So, the experience that I had with Hayashi-san in the beginning of my career, and then later on, really kind of, were critical and the foundation for what I'm going to share with you. And this was important, critically important for me, and I want to share with the audience at all ages, at all stages in their career. It's about finding an alignment, okay? Or as you would expect, a blend between our professional life and our personal lives. People talk about work and life balance. I don't want you to have a work and life balance. I would suggest that you have a beautiful work and, there's the and again, life blend. I want you to think about the work blend. And that blend of work and life may be different depending on where you are in your life. But you need to be consistent with your purpose, which is discipline, over a long period of time. And I got very, very lucky to be introduced to this very basic principle, but it's a bit of a tool as well that has been in Japanese culture for centuries, if not millennia. And I was exposed to that. It was very, very helpful to me. It's in Japanese it's the ikigai. Many other authors and researchers have identified this on more from a Western perspective and use it as well. But it's really about finding your purpose or mission in life, no matter where you are, no matter where your social status, socioeconomic status is, and where you are, position you are in an organization. And the way to find that, and I'm going to really summarize here for people, is to find the center, that mission, that purpose is very important. And what I'll ask people to do is to identify these three circles that, as you would imagine, it will become some sort of a Venn diagram with a little center that we're going to get you. And these three circles are very important. I want you to, and Hayashi-san made me think about that in the beginning of my career, which seemed so premature, but in hindsight was so critical important because I got it wrong, but then I was able to make adjustments. And here's what I want you, if you have thought about this, is wonderful. If you have not thought, and I would say that most, based on our empirical research, the majority of leaders, and I'm talking about 90% plus, have never considered this. So I want you to consider this. And it's especially important if you're earlier in your career. So I want you to come up with first with an inventory of your passions. The first circle is about passion. What are you passionate about? And I'm talking about passion about, at all levels. Personal level, hobbies that you have, professional levels, things that you do related to work. Come up with an inventory of your passions and put on that circle what I'm passionate about. And I know there are different degrees of levels of passion, and they come and go. Don't worry about it right now. Just do an inventory of the things that you're passionate about. Capture that. The next circle is, what can you become the greatest at? What can you become the greatest at? It's the combination of your natural abilities and capabilities, but also a lot of skill development that you had that allows you to not just be good at something, but to become great at something. And remember that when you're in the great territory, you're competing with the world. So it's a high mark. So you may need to be very niche about it. You may need to find something very specific that makes you potentially the greatest at. And if you don't have that, it's a sign that you need to develop skills. You need to develop capabilities. So go develop skills and capabilities, but not at random. I'm going to tell you, go align those skills and capabilities with the first circle, with some of the passions that you have. So develop skills and capabilities associated with some of the passions that you have, and then you start finding combinations of passions and capabilities that can be really good. And the third circle is that, how do I create value to the world? How do I create value to the world? So I'll summarize again. What am I passionate about? What can I become the greatest at? And very importantly, how do I use those two in an intersection to create financial or social value to the world? Regardless, what are you passionate about? What can you become the greatest at? And how do you create value to the world? The intersection of those three circles is most likely to be your purpose or mission in life. And two things. Number one, you need to develop those items, those three circles, with that, to develop that purpose or mission. That's critically important. And that's going to develop over time. But it's very important that you're disciplined. To be disciplined means you have to be consistent with your purpose, that purpose. So you're going to develop skills, capabilities, passions, and ability to create value consistent with that purpose. That's discipline over a long period of time. You are, by all means, that purpose may shift a little bit. But you don't want radical departures, because now you're gonna become inconsistent with your purpose. So how do you become consistent with that purpose? Is by your decision making is aligned with that purpose. It's very easy to make decisions. If it's aligned with that purpose, you say yes. If it's not aligned with that purpose and they're gonna offer you, $1 billion, say no. That requires discipline, courage, and discipline to be consistent with that purpose. Okay? Most people don't do this. Most people let the river of life just take them around. They are not rowing in the directions that they should be going. So take control over the direction of your life and work. So find your purpose and mission. Be critically consistent with that purpose. Very, very few people have ever done this. They just follow the next promotion, the next title, the next company, the next leader, the next step, progression in my career, and they are just kind of going down the river, carried by the currents. Don't allow that to happen to yourself. Guide your mission. Guide your purpose. It's not an esoteric, abstract principle. It's critically important. Great enduring leaders and organizations, they have critically defined to themselves what the center is. They know what they're passionate about. They know what they're the greatest at in the world, and they certainly know how they create value to the world by doing that. And if you do that center consistent, you're going to create disproportional value in the marketplace, and guess what? You're going to get rewarded randomly in the long run. But you need to be patient. You need to have purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. Summarize this with a quote from Abraham Maslow. And it's not about the hierarchy of needs, okay? The pyramid tells you that you definitely need to survive first. You need to be basic needs. And at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. But do you know how Maslow actually defined self-actualization, practical self-actualization in his extensive work? This is not well understood. I will quote from him directly. Discover what you're meant to do. Discover what you're meant to do. That purpose, that center. Jim Collins calls it the hedgehog, the center. Discover what you're meant to do, but that's not enough. And commit to the ardor of pursuing it with excellence. This was not said by Jim Collins or Peter Drucker or any other of the excellence, people. It was said by Abraham Maslow. Discover what you're meant to do. That's your purpose, but that's not enough. And commit to the ardor, the hard work of pursuing it with excellence. His words. Which means that once you find the center, be chronically consistent with the centers. Purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience on that center. So I beg those who are listening to this to find what that center is for you and then pursue that mission. Because if we have more people who understand what their purpose is, not from an abstract level, but from a meaningful level to them, practical level for themselves, and they're consistent, chronically consistent with that purpose over a long period of time, they're going to be creating disproportional value to society and to themselves, and they will have a rewarding, fulfilling life. And that's my message. There's much more to talk about in terms of collaborative leadership and excellence, innovation, acceleration. Again, for those of you who want to learn more, they can follow our journey on LinkedIn. They can check our website, www.excellenceinnovation.com. Even though that's much more of a template, I have a mailing list where we send updates that are more meaningful to our members. We have over 2 million members across all professional associations worldwide. So we do lots of collaboration, as you imagine, across industries. So follow us, stay connected, and collaborate if it's aligned with your purpose. And I know that the audience that listens to your podcast is a highly qualified audience, colleagues who have been in similar journeys in their industries. So it's a real privilege, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Very kind words. Thanks so much, Jose. And like I said, it's just an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you.